put in the record at this point.
Thank you.
And now I'm delighted to welcome Attorney General Janet Rio to the committee in her first appearance before us since being sworn in. We're familiar with her background as a result of the confirmation hearings. However, for those who are not, I just tell you a little bit about her. From 1978 until the time of her appointment as Attorney General, Mrs. Reno was a state attorney in Miami, Florida. She's been partner in a Miami-based law firm, an assistant state attorney, staff director of the Florida House of Representatives Judiciary Committee. She comes from good Florida stock, feeling every bit at home, as much with alligators as with the more dangerous predators she's encountered on this side of the Potomac. And, Madam Attorney General, while we regret the sad events that necessitated this hearing, we welcome you. We look forward to your testimony. You proceed as you see fit.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Can everybody hear me? I truly appreciate this opportunity to appear before you to discuss the tragic events at the compound in Waco, Texas this past week. I want to be as open as possible with you and with all the American people about what we knew before, what we knew on that day, and what we know now, and as our investigation proceeds. I want to be responsible and accountable to the Congress and to the American people in every way I possibly can. This is one of the hardest decisions that anybody could ever be asked to make. We deliberated long and carefully before reaching a decision. Nothing we do now can change the suffering felt by the families of the ATF agents or the families of those who perished in the compound. But as you have pointed out so eloquently, we must do everything we can to learn from these events about what we can do in the future to prevent people like David Koresh or people motivated by other thoughts from causing such a senseless, horrible loss of human life. On February 28, 1993, 4 agents of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms were killed and 16 were injured in a shootout that occurred when they attempted to execute an arrest warrant for Vernon Howell, also known as David Koresh, and a search warrant at the Branch Davidian compound near Waco, Texas. The agents were met by a barrage of gunfire from numerous firing points in the compound that lasted 45 minutes, involved thousands of rounds of ammunition, and left the agents dead and injured. Weapons used by the Branch Davidians included 50 caliber rifles having an effective range of 3,000 yards from the Capitol to the White House. All of those killed or wounded were shot or injured by homemade hand grenades. While several members of the commune were killed and injured, there was apparently no serious injury to any of the children. After the shootout, the remaining ATF agents established a protective perimeter around the compound. A few hours later, 3 Branch Davidians attempted to enter the compound, resulting in a second shootout with ATF agents in which 1 Davidian was killed. Attempts were made to further secure the perimeter. ATF officials then requested that the FBI dispatch its hostage rescue team, which we refer to as HRT. On February 28, 1993, agents of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, including the HRT, arrived on the scene. The FBI found an armed fortress, a compound consisting of approximately 70 acres, located on Route 7 near Waco. I took office on March 12, 1993. After my FBI clearance, I had been briefed previously by the acting Attorney General and was thereafter briefed specifically on the situation at Waco. I was advised that the primary goal of the FBI's hostage rescue team was to negotiate with Koresh to secure the release of the children and the surrender and prosecution of all those who participated in the murder and assault of the federal agents without further violence or injury to anyone concerned. I concurred that we must try to negotiate to avoid further bloodshed to the extent that we could. As this situation evolved, the FBI had consistently rejected a direct assault on the compound because of the danger of heavy casualties to the agents and to the children, and because of the layout which prevented a surprise assault. I was told, as I was briefed, that the FBI had a trained negotiator on the scene, and that they had, and during the course of these deliberations, continued to consult with behavioral experts and others who had knowledge of the cult to determine how best to proceed to negotiate with Koresh. From the start, the negotiation tactics focused on restricting the activities of those inside the compound and depriving them of a comfortable environment so as to bring the matter to a conclusion without further violence. Those inside the compound were advised of the FBI's rules of engagement. Under those rules, the agents conveyed the information that they would not use deadly force against any person except as necessary in self-defense or defense of another, when they had reason to believe that they or another were in danger of death or grievous bodily harm. The FBI installed lights to illuminate the compound at night and loudspeakers to ensure that they could communicate with all members of the compound at once, rather than having to rely solely on the single telephone line available to speak to Koresh and those he permitted to talk on the phone. They also used loudspeakers to disrupt their sleep. They cut off their electricity, and they sought to restrict communications of those within the compound just to the hostage negotiators. Additionally, they sent in letters from family members and made other good faith efforts designed to encourage surrender by those who wished to leave the compound. In particular, and I asked about this during the course of our deliberations, they made repeated efforts to secure the release of the children. In further efforts to encourage the negotiating process, attorneys representing Koresh and Steve Schneider were allowed to enter the compound or communicate by telephone with them on several occasions. Throughout this 51-day process, Koresh continued to assert that he and others inside would at some point surrender. However, the FBI advised that at no point did he keep his word on any of his promises. Despite all efforts, the negotiators concluded that negotiations were at a standstill and that they had not been able to negotiate a single item with Koresh. Although 21 children and 14 adults had been allowed to leave the compound between February 28th and March 23rd, 1993, those persons who left the compound did so because Koresh affirmatively wanted them out, as they were not fully committed to his cause, they were a drain on his efforts in internal discipline and resources, or he viewed them as potential spokesmen to the media. During the week of April the 5th, the FBI advised me that they were developing a plan for the possible use of tear gas in an effort to increase the pressure on those in the compound to surrender. Thereafter, I had a series of meetings with the FBI to discuss the emerging proposal. The threshold question I asked was whether the gas would cause permanent injury to the children. I did not even want to consider the matter further if we could not be certain about this factor. The FBI assured me that the gas would not cause permanent injury. I asked them to research further, and subsequently they arranged for me to meet with Dr. Harry Salem, a top expert in toxicology who is chief of the Life Sciences Department at the Edgewood Arsenal. He reviewed with me case studies that confirmed that it would not cause permanent injury. Then the primary question I asked again and again during the ensuing discussion was, why now? Why not wait? I asked about their food and water supply and was told that it could last at least a year or more. I asked that the information about the water supply be checked and double-checked by observing the level in the water tanks. We explored but could not develop a feasible method for cutting off their water supply. I asked my staff to have direct personal discussions by phone with the chief negotiator on the scene to satisfy ourselves that we had indeed reached an impasse in discussions and negotiations. After a 2.5-hour conversation, that seemed clear. I became convinced that short of allowing David Koresh to go free, he was not coming out voluntarily. Given that unacceptable result, in light of the fact that he was such a dangerous criminal, allowing the status quo to remain was not going to lead to an ultimate peaceful resolution and eliminate any risk to the safety of the innocent children in the compound, the public at large, or the government agents at the scene. On the contrary, the passage of time only increased the likelihood of incidents and possible injuries and attendant injuries and harm.